The moment I first stepped into the barracks, I knew something was off. The air felt heavy, thick with the sound of boot heels slapping the floor, the clatter of metal against metal, and the gruff shouts of drill sergeants. But there was something else, something that had nothing to do with the military routine. It was the eyes. They didn't look at me the way they looked at the others. No one said it, but you could feel it. I wasn't one of them. Not yet. Sergeant Miller's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Private Riley," he barked, snapping my attention to him. The words weren't a question. They didn't need to be. "You think you're ready for this?" His eyes scanned me, from my two big boots to the faded t-shirt under my jacket. "Because I sure as hell don't. Get your shit together, or I'll make sure you're out of here faster than you can say failure." The other recruits were quiet, but their eyes told the story. They didn't see a soldier. They saw someone who didn't belong. I could feel their judgment from across the room. The whispering started almost immediately. "She's from that small town. What's she doing here? Probably just a charity case." I thought that was the end of it. But no, the ridicule just kept coming. Later, during the first drill, I fumbled with my rifle. It felt like the whole squad was watching me, waiting for me to screw up. And I did. My fingers slipped, the rifle slammed against the ground, and I heard a chuckle from somewhere behind me. "How'd she get through the door?" Private James sneered, barely containing his laughter. I wanted to disappear. I thought about quitting. What would I even be proving? But something stopped me. I wasn't sure what, but I didn't give up. Not in front of them. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest. And I sure as hell wasn't the loudest. But I kept going. In the mess hall, when the others picked on me for taking too long with my food, I stayed silent. I just kept eating. They'd mutter, make jokes about my lack of social grace. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't here for them. I was here for something bigger. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I didn't have a friend in that room, or at least that's what I thought. Private Walker was there. He was always on the edge of the group, quiet, observing. He never joined in on the jokes, but he never stepped in to stop them either. The others didn't seem to notice him much. I guess that's what made him different. One night, after a brutal set of drills in the rain, I was exhausted, more mentally than physically. Everyone was talking about the next day's inspection, talking about how they were going to kick ass. I was too tired to respond, too tired to pretend I was part of their group. As I bent down to wipe my boots, Walker passed by. I didn't expect anything, but he stopped. "You'll get through it," he said, low enough that no one else could hear. I didn't know what to say. For a moment, it felt like the whole world had stopped. Maybe it was just the rain, or maybe it was the fact that someone had finally acknowledged the pain without mocking it. I nodded, though it was barely a gesture, but it felt like the world was a little bit lighter. But then everything changed in ways I couldn't imagine. The next morning, during a drill, something snapped. My rifle jammed at the worst possible time, right in front of the whole squad. I could feel the tension in the air, the heavy stares. I bent down to fix it, trying to ignore the murmurs, trying to focus. But I knew they were watching, waiting for me to fail again. I could hear their disbelief, Private James's voice cutting through the silence like a whip. "Guess we know who's holding the rest of us back." Then, just as I finally cleared the jam, I heard Sergeant Miller's voice ring out. "Private Riley, what are you waiting for? Move your ass." The words stung, but I kept going. It felt like the whole room was laughing at me. I kept my head down, blocking it all out. But as I finished the drill, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just moving to get through it. I was moving to prove them wrong. What I never expected was that the very thing they mocked me for, the way I moved quietly without drawing attention, would be the thing that kept me going. By the time we gathered for inspection later that week, something had changed. The eyes that once held only ridicule now held something else. I couldn't tell if it was respect or disbelief, but it was there. Walker noticed too. "Keep your head up," he said, giving me a look that told me more than any words could. Maybe I was starting to earn my place, even if I wasn't there yet. But I wasn't giving up. I wasn't walking away. I'd come too far to stop now. And as I looked around the barracks, I felt it. The same silent pressure. But now it was different. The sneers were quieter, the jeers less certain. There was still a long way to go. But I wasn't backing down. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Every day felt like a battle. The drills, the constant pressure, the eyes that watched me like I was a walking mistake, it all added up. I had thought I could handle boot camp, but I hadn't expected this. The constant feeling of being just a little bit behind. The gap between me and everyone else wasn't just physical. It was in the way they moved with confidence, the way they talked like they had known this life forever. And then there was me, small-town Sarah Riley, who could barely get her boots straight in inspection. Sergeant Miller was relentless. Every mistake I made felt like a personal failure, something for him to latch onto and throw in my face. "Riley!" he yelled across the courtyard, his voice cutting through the air like a hot knife. "You better start moving faster, or you'll be the one holding this squad back. Don't think I won't let you know." The whole squad heard it, their eyes darting to me, watching, waiting for the next mistake. I was already tired of being the target, tired of the jokes, tired of the whispers. "Can't believe they let her in," Private James muttered under his breath, loud enough for me to hear. The others snickered, their laughter making my stomach turn. I was done with it, but there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. At least not yet. The days were long, too long. The drills felt like they would never end. Hours of marching, rifle drills, hand-to-hand combat training, and endless repetitions of commands. I couldn't tell if it was the physical exhaustion or the emotional weight of being underestimated that wore me down more. It was like a fog that settled in my chest every time I took a breath. And I had learned to breathe through it. Slow, controlled, like I was back in that small town, just trying to make it through another day without being noticed. Then came the morning of the obstacle course. I had been dreading it since the first week. Everyone talked about it, how tough it was, how it separated the soldiers who could hack it from those who couldn't. I wasn't ready, I knew that, but I couldn't back out. I had to try. My legs were stiff from the endless drills. My hands were already blistered from the rifle exercises, but I was going to give it everything I had. It didn't take long for the voices to start. Private James was behind me, just like I knew he would be. "She's gonna slow us down. Watch." His voice was loud enough for the rest of the squad to hear, and I could feel their eyes on my back, waiting for me to falter. And when I did, they'd be there to catch it. They always were. The first obstacle was a wall, tall and unforgiving. Everyone scaled it with ease, but when I reached it, I froze. I had never been good with heights. My hands trembled as I tried to find a grip, but the wall felt like it was mocking me. I could hear the others already starting the next leg of the course, their footsteps fading as they moved on. My heart raced, but I couldn't stop. If I did, I knew it would be over. So I kept going, pulling myself up slowly, my boots scraping the wall as I finally made it over. But the second obstacle was worse, a mud pit. My boots sank into the thick, wet muck, the cold water splashing up my legs as I struggled to keep my balance. It felt like the entire course was working against me, as if the ground itself was trying to swallow me whole. Private James's voice echoed in my mind. "I told you she couldn't do it." I slipped again, my hands pushing against the mud to regain my footing. My uniform was soaked, weighed down by the dirt and water, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I pushed through the muck, hands and knees covered in grime, until I reached the other side. That's when I heard it. "Come on, Riley, keep moving." It wasn't Sergeant Miller. It wasn't Private James. It was Private Walker. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But his words hung in the air like a lifeline. Keep moving. It was simple. It was quiet. But it was the first time someone had spoken to me like I wasn't already a failure. I pushed through the rest of the course, each step feeling heavier than the last, but somehow I made it. And when I crossed the finish line, I thought it was over. But the looks on their faces, the smirks, the disbelief, they told a different story. Sergeant Miller didn't even acknowledge me. He just turned away, barking orders to the others like I didn't even matter. The squad moved on without a word, but I could feel them. They were waiting. They were waiting for me to drop out, to give up. I didn't. The rest of the day felt like I was walking through a fog. The pressure was still there, hanging over me like a cloud. But I had made it through the obstacle course. I had made it through something that almost broke me, and that, in itself, felt like a victory. But then came the evening training, one I hadn't expected. We were supposed to simulate a firefight, moving in and out of cover, communicating as a unit. I was already tired, drained from the day, but I couldn't back down. When it was my turn, I froze. It wasn't the gunfire that scared me. It was the pressure, the eyes of the squad, the way everyone was waiting for me to mess up. I was in position, trying to steady my breathing when the signal came. I moved into cover, but I miscalculated. I didn't clear the corner the way I should have, and I almost exposed myself. Private James saw it. "Nice move, Riley. Maybe you should just stay in the rear where you belong." I felt my heart drop, the sting of his words cutting deeper than the criticism of Sergeant Miller. But before I could respond, something unexpected happened. Walker, the one who had quietly been watching, the one who had spoken to me on the obstacle course, stepped in. He moved with precision, his voice steady as he corrected the formation. "She's fine. I've got it." It wasn't much, but it was something. Something that had never happened before. For the first time since I had arrived, someone was stepping up for me. And in that moment, I knew everything had changed. I thought about the drill the next day, about how I'd be tested again. But something inside me had shifted. The fear that had lived in my chest, that constant knot of doubt. It was still there, but it wasn't winning anymore. I wasn't done yet. And as I lay on my cot that night, staring at the ceiling, I finally allowed myself to hope. Maybe they were right about me after all. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. But then again, maybe they were wrong. Maybe I was exactly where I was supposed to be. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The days blurred together, one endless grind of drills, push-ups, and the kind of exhaustion that made me question why I even signed up. I knew I was in deep, too deep, but there was no turning back. Each day I felt a little further away from the girl who first walked through those gates, the girl who thought she could make it, despite everything. But here I was, standing on the edge, trying to prove myself while the rest of them just waited for me to break. And then came the simulation that changed everything. It was supposed to be another standard day, another drill to test our reaction times, our teamwork, our ability to think under pressure. Nothing special. At least that's what I thought until Sergeant Miller started barking out orders like he always did. He'd been riding me for weeks, pointing out every little flaw, every missed step, and every mistake. "Riley, move faster. We don't have all day." His voice echoed in the drill yard, sending a wave of discomfort through me. But it was nothing new. I'd learned to ignore it, or at least try to. The squad was broken into groups, and we were assigned to different positions. I was at the rear where I usually was, the place where the screw-ups went, the ones who weren't quite good enough to be in the front lines. That's how they saw me anyway. Hell, I was starting to think the same thing. But I was ready to prove them wrong. I had to. The drill began. A series of obstacles were set up across the yard. Simulated gunfire rang out from speakers, and we were supposed to move quickly, take cover, and communicate. Simple, right? Not for me. Not for Private Riley. I stumbled over my footing as we sprinted to the first cover point. Private James, who had been leading the group, glanced over his shoulder at me, a look of disbelief written on his face. "Hurry up, Riley. We're not waiting for you," he yelled. I could feel my heart pounding, the fear rising in my chest, but I pushed it back. I wasn't going to screw this up. Then the worst happened. We hit the next point, a narrow passage with obstacles on both sides. As I moved forward, my rifle got stuck on a barbed wire fence. The moment I tried to pull it free, my helmet slipped off. I could hear the squad's laughter even as the fake gunfire blasted around us. Private James was the first to speak. "What the hell, Riley? Get it together." His voice cut through the noise, and for the first time, I felt like the entire squad was watching me fail again. I could feel the heat of their eyes on me, the weight of their judgment pressing down harder than any drill sergeant's orders. I couldn't breathe. I was humiliated, but I had to keep going. I had to finish this, no matter what. "Private Riley," Sergeant Miller shouted, his voice filled with the kind of anger that made my blood run cold. "You think you're cut out for this? You're holding the whole squad back. Maybe it's time you go back to where you belong. Out of my sight." His words stung like a slap, and I thought I was going to crumble under the pressure. But instead I gritted my teeth and shoved the helmet back on. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let them see me break. The next part of the drill was supposed to be a firefight simulation. We were supposed to work as a team, moving in and out of cover while suppressing enemy fire. It wasn't much different than what we had done 100 times before, but this time, the tension was thicker. Everyone knew the drill wasn't just about tactics anymore. It was about me proving myself. And if I didn't, it might be the end of my time here. We moved into position, crouched behind a line of barrels, and waited for the signal to advance. But something went wrong. Private James, the loudmouth, miscalculated his timing. He moved too early, exposing himself to enemy fire. And that's when the real test came. The whole squad froze, watching him struggle to get to cover. He was pinned down, and the team was losing its rhythm. "James is down," Private Walker yelled. I didn't hesitate. I knew what I had to do. Without thinking, I sprinted out from cover, my boots pounding against the dirt. I didn't look back. The shots rang out, but I kept my focus, my hands steady. I reached James, grabbed him by the collar, and dragged him back behind cover. I don't even remember how I did it, how I made it through that open ground without getting shot. But I did. The team was in shock, but they didn't have time to process it. I wasn't fast, I wasn't loud, but in that moment, I was something they hadn't expected, a soldier who knew how to act when it counted. We finished the drill, but no one was laughing. No one was mocking me. For the first time, the squad was silent. Sergeant Miller stood off to the side, his arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He didn't say a word. Neither did anyone else. The air was thick with something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I didn't look around for approval. I just focused on the task at hand, trying to stay steady, trying to stay calm. But my heart was racing. My legs were shaking. We got back to the barracks later that night, and the usual banter began. But this time, there was a different tone. The jeers weren't as sharp. The jokes weren't as cruel. It was like something had shifted, something I couldn't understand. Then Private Walker came up to me. "You did good out there," he said, his voice quiet, but the respect in his eyes was unmistakable. "We didn't think you had it in you." His words hit me harder than anything anyone had said to me in weeks. I wanted to thank him, to say something. That would make this all feel real, but I couldn't. Instead, I just nodded, grateful for the first time that someone saw me, not as the screw-up, not as the one who would be the first to quit, but as part of the team. But the real twist didn't come until the following morning. Sergeant Miller called us to attention, his voice steady but filled with an unfamiliar edge. "Private Riley," he said, stepping forward, "you did something yesterday. You saved one of your own. That's what matters. I was wrong about you." The squad went silent, their eyes darting between me and the sergeant. Private James's face turned red, his eyes darting toward me and then to the ground. "I'll admit it," Miller continued, his tone softer than usual. "I've been hard on you, but you've earned your place here." I stood there frozen as the weight of his words settled over me. The humiliation, the doubts, the endless judgment, they had all come to this one moment. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day I first arrived. Respect. It wasn't the loud kind. It wasn't the kind that made the world stop and applaud. But it was real, and it was mine. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The weeks after the firefight drill felt like a constant test. Every time I thought I might have earned a little bit of respect, the pressure came back even harder. The weight of the squad's judgment didn't lift. It lingered in the air like the humidity before a storm, thick, suffocating. Sergeant Miller wasn't as harsh anymore, but his silence was worse. When he looked at me, it was like he was waiting for me to screw up again, just so he could say, "I told you so." But I didn't screw up. I kept my head down. I kept pushing forward. I thought that was the price of silence. that if I just kept working hard enough, they'd see me as one of them. But it wasn't that simple. The more I tried to prove myself, the more I realized that respect wasn't something you could earn by doing everything right. It wasn't something that came easily. The day came when we had to take part in an overnight survival exercise, the kind of training that made every part of you ache. We'd been preparing for weeks, practicing navigation, field strategy, combat awareness. It wasn't just a test of physical strength. It was a test of character, of how well we could perform under the most brutal conditions. We were sent into the woods carrying only the bare essentials. No luxuries, no comfort. The only thing that mattered was survival. I wasn't prepared for the isolation, the darkness, the loneliness of being out there, away from everyone and everything. The sound of leaves crunching beneath my boots felt like the loudest noise in the world. By the time we set up camp, I was exhausted. The other soldiers were already making jokes, trying to shake off the discomfort, but I couldn't. I was too tired, too focused on keeping it together. My hands were shaking as I set up my tent. It was stupid, I knew, but the fear of failing, of falling short again, was almost worse than the cold air biting at my skin. As I struggled with the tent, I heard someone behind me. "You need help with that?" It was Private Walker. He was the only one who ever seemed to notice me without judgment. I looked up, surprised. "I've got it," I said quickly, trying to hide the way my voice trembled. He didn't push. Instead, he just nodded and went back to his own campfire. But something about the quiet kindness of his words stuck with me. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind me that there was still something inside me worth fighting for. That night, we had to do a night patrol. It was one of those mandatory exercises where every detail mattered. The squad was divided into teams, and I found myself in the rear again. I didn't mind. I knew my place. We moved through the woods, the only light coming from our flashlights, the sounds of our breathing filling the silence. My heart was pounding as I tried to keep pace. I could feel the cold air against my face, could feel the sweat soaking my uniform. I thought I was handling it well, but then I heard it, the crack of a twig underfoot. My eyes shot to the side, my body tensing, but there was nothing there. "Riley!" Sergeant Miller's voice was low but urgent. "Get your shit together. Stay focused." I bit my lip, trying to block out the sting of his words. He was right. I couldn't let my mind wander. I had to stay sharp. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that no matter how hard I tried, there was always someone watching, always someone waiting for me to fall short. And that's when it happened. The signal came from the front of the line, an alert. The team ahead had encountered a simulated ambush. I froze, my mind going blank for just a second. I knew what I had to do. I had to run forward, get to the front, and help. But the fear of moving too fast, the fear of failing, paralyzed me. Sergeant Miller was watching me, his eyes cold as he moved to the front. "Riley!" he barked, his tone sharp. "You're supposed to be a part of this team. Stop standing there and move." I moved, but not fast enough. I heard the crack of a rifle from the front, and my heart leaped into my throat. The squad ahead had been hit. The team that had been in front was now under fire. And that's when I saw it. Private James lying on the ground. The blood drained from my face. This was real. This wasn't a drill anymore. I heard the orders from Sergeant Miller, commands to fall back and secure the position. I heard the voices of the others shouting out orders, trying to figure out where the simulated fire was coming from. But all I could think about was James, sprawled on the ground. Something snapped inside me. I didn't think. I just acted. I ran forward, pushing through the brush, moving faster than I ever had. I reached James, dragging him to cover, my hands shaking but steady as I yanked him behind a tree. The whole time I could hear Miller's voice, distant but commanding. "Cover the rear. Get the rest of them to safety." I didn't stop. I pulled James further into the trees, ignoring the orders. I wasn't thinking. I was just doing. Finally, we were in the clear. James was safe. But when I looked around, I realized something. The rest of the squad had followed me. They'd seen what I did. They'd seen me act without hesitation, without fear. I could feel the tension in the air as we regrouped, the weight of what had just happened settling over us like a heavy blanket. Sergeant Miller didn't speak for a long time, but when he did, his voice was quieter than usual. "Private Riley," he said, looking at me for the first time like he really saw me. That was impressive. Impressive, it wasn't the words I'd expected to hear, but it was enough. The squad didn't laugh at me anymore. They didn't mock me. They respected me. And as we made our way back to camp, the reality of what had just happened started to sink in. I hadn't just saved James, I had saved myself. In that moment, I realized something. Respect wasn't about doing everything perfectly. It wasn't about being the loudest or the fastest. It was about showing up when it mattered. It was about proving that you were willing to fight for the team, no matter what. As I sat by the fire that night, tired but proud, I finally understood. This wasn't just about proving them wrong. This was about proving something to myself. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. It was the morning after the most intense night of my life. The whole squad had been up, some talking, some quietly reflecting, but I could feel the weight of the last few days bearing down on all of us. The survival training, the simulated ambush, everything had changed. It felt like a turning point, but I didn't know where it would lead yet. The pressure had been relentless, but now the tension felt different. It was as if everyone had just realized that I wasn't going anywhere. I could feel eyes on me in the chow hall that morning. The usual whispers had stopped, replaced with an awkward quiet that made it hard to eat. Private James didn't say anything. He just kept his eyes on his tray, like the memory of last night still stung. It should have felt like a victory, being seen as more than the screw-up, but instead it felt like something else. "Private Riley," Sergeant Miller's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. I froze, not sure what to expect. He had been quieter, almost distant since I'd pulled James to safety. Maybe he respected me now, or maybe he was just looking for an excuse to bring me down again. Either way, I wasn't sure I was ready for what was coming. He walked toward me, his boots clicking sharply against the concrete floor, and I braced myself. "Get up," he ordered. I stood, my heart pounding. "Your actions last night," he began, his voice low but heavy with the weight of what was coming, "were impressive." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. I expected something harsher, some kind of acknowledgement that my actions were a fluke or something that could easily be brushed aside. But no, it wasn't that. For a moment, the squad was quiet, waiting for me to speak, for someone to say something. He paused, looked me straight in the eye and added, "You've earned your place here. Don't think for a second you haven't." The words hit harder than I expected. I had spent so much time trying to prove myself, trying to push through the judgment, that I hadn't realized how badly I'd been craving that one moment of recognition. For so long, I felt like I was invisible, like I didn't belong. And now here I was. I had fought for my place, and I had finally earned it. As the squad gathered, around something shifted. Private James, who had always been the first to mock, gave me a brief nod. He didn't say a word, but that small gesture meant more than any apology could have. And even though I knew the others might not respect me fully yet, I didn't care. They had seen what I could do, and that was enough. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The respect had been earned, and that was the last thing I ever thought I would get from them. I had fought my way from the bottom, and now I was standing at the top. Not as someone who had been given a place, but as someone who had earned it. After Sergeant Miller left, there was a brief, almost hesitant silence among the group. And then, Private Walker, who had always been the quiet one, the one who noticed without saying much, finally spoke up. "You did good, Riley," he said quietly, his voice just above a whisper. And that was it. No one else said anything, but the air in the room felt different. The squad didn't mock me anymore. They didn't ignore me either. They respected me. Not because they had to, but because they saw me for who I really was. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving here. I was living it. That night, as I lay in my bunk, I thought about everything I had gone through, the failures, the humiliation, the quiet moments of doubt. I thought about the girl who had walked in here, unsure of herself, convinced she wasn't cut out for this life. And I realized something. I had changed. This wasn't just about proving everyone else wrong anymore. It was about proving something to myself, that I belonged, that I was strong enough, that I had earned my place in this world. And no matter what came next, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to quit. Not now, not ever. And as I closed my eyes, a sense of peace washed over me. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from comfort or ease. It was the peace that comes from knowing you've done the hard work, that you've fought through the storm, and now you're standing on the other side. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the training field, the squad stood together. The weight of the day's lessons hung in the air like the faintest smell of gunpowder. Sergeant Miller, who had once been a symbol of harshness and judgment, walked past me. For the first time he stopped. His eyes met mine, and with a single subtle nod, he acknowledged what had been earned. It was more than respect. It was understanding. It was the kind of unspoken brotherhood that soldiers feel in the quietest moments, and for that I stood taller than ever before. I stood there beneath the American flag, the wind tugging at the fabric, carrying with it 1,000 unspoken words. My hands were steady, my shoulders square. This wasn't just a flag. It was a reminder of everything we'd fought for. Resilience, sacrifice, and the belief that we all have a place no matter where we come from or how the world sees us. The lesson is simple, yet hard won. We all face challenges. We all carry burdens. We all have moments where we're underestimated, written off, or pushed aside. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You learn, you adapt, you rise. And in the end, it's not the words you say, but the actions you take that truly define who you are. So the next time you're knocked down, don't stay down. Don't let the world tell you who you are. Stand back up. Let your actions speak louder than the doubts others throw your way. We're all in this together, and in the end, brotherhood is what carries us through. If this story resonates with you, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it moved you, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of who we are, together. Stay strong and take care of one another.